I'm really happy that you're all here. I'm super excited about this session, and I'm going to go ahead and just get started. So, welcome to this afternoon session um, with the conference. I know people are dialing in from all over, so it's afternoon here. So I'll say good afternoon. It may still be morning for you West Coasters. Um, but the theme of this year's conference is servant leadership, and this is such an important theme, especially in today's age. And it says a lot that you all are here, you're trying to keep moving forward and being of service to our people, to other people. So thank you for participating and for joining today. I did want to start off by telling you a little bit about who I am and why I'm here. My name's Chelsie Wilson. I live and work in Oklahoma City. Husband Garrett and our kids Wyatt and Audrey. You may recognize my dad. He's there in the right-hand corner holding my daughter Audrey. Over on the left-hand side, that's my mom with my grandma Lucille. It's really kind of funny. They were both born on January 7th, so they're birthday buddies, but obviously my grandma Lucille is a little bit older than my mom. And then there is my son Wyatt in the front, and my sisters and my Aunt Starla. And today is a really special day, not just because I'm here, but because my youngest, my daughter Audrey, is 1 year old today. So we're going to be singing happy birthday here in a little bit. So that's just a little bit about who I am. What I do, I am the chief of staff at an organization called Teach for America in Oklahoma City. And what Teach for America does is we find, develop, and support exceptional and diverse leaders so they can transform education and expand opportunity with children in the classroom. As chief of staff, what I do is I just try to drive impact, not just across our team, but across our community in Oklahoma City toward our 10-year goal, which we've only recently become super clear on, but our 10-year goal is that by 2030, we want to double the number of students in Oklahoma City to reach key educational milestones, indicating that they're on a path to economic mobility and a future filled with possibility. So I get a lot of energy out of our goals and our mission. And in my role as chief of staff, I train our teachers. We have around 40 teachers in Oklahoma City. I train them on topics like leadership and professional development around diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Before I came to Teach for America, I worked in Washington, D.C. for almost 5 years on federal Indian policy in nonprofits and trade associations in D.C. And before that, in 2012, I actually worked for our tribe, the Cherokee Nation, in the Government Relations Department, and have a lot of really great memories of being a tribal employee and working on all of our federal policy issues that touch the lives of our people. So that was a really great time in my life. And I'm really, really, really excited to talk to you today about values-based leadership in 2020. That's the topic of this session, and this is kind of the question we'll be grappling with today. What exactly does it mean to lead others effectively through times of great change, which is a time that we find ourselves in right now? Change is incredibly rapid. Sometimes we find ourselves afraid, and we don't know many answers to some really important questions. So given that that is the context that we all find ourselves in, whether or not you're in California or you're in New York or right here in Oklahoma, it seems like a good use of our time. So I'm very, very happy that we're here and we can grapple with this question together. So if you're accustomed to using Zoom, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and type in the chat really quick one value that you've seen become more important to you or grow stronger over the past 6 months. So would love to hear from you all. Patience I love that, David. I hope that I've gotten more patient over the past 6 months. Loyalty. I completely agree with that one. Being gracious. Slowing down. I love that, Mariah. I've definitely felt that too. Life just moves a little bit slower. And that helps when things change so rapidly from day to day. So yeah, these are all commiseration. That's pretty funny. It's true. Empathy. That's great. Beautiful. Yes, it's nice to have people to commiserate with. It's important for processing. Thank you all for participating. Love hearing from you. I think that, yeah, we've all seen some values come into focus just because like our people are mentioning in the chat right now, things are slowing down. There's a lot that we can't do, could do, not even thinking about it. So we'll go ahead and hone in on our objectives for our time together today. I want to start off by checking in and assessing what is referred to as a CAMP score for your organization or your team, whoever you're here representing today. Then I want to discuss resources for how to lead others in times of great change that have been transformative for me as I'm leading our regional team here in Oklahoma City, helping us to meet people where and tools that are actually incredibly useful in slowing down, like some of you are saying, and getting a little bit more deliberate and focusing on what's actually really, really important and what we can let go of. And then the third thing I'm going to take us through is we're going to begin to create our very own declaration of interdependence for your organization or your team that you're representing today, that you can bring back to them after the conference. And hopefully you all can use it to guide your work and lead you through the values that you share at your community organization, on your work team, whoever's on your heart today. So here's a look at our agenda. I already kind of took us through what we're going to be going through with the objectives and what I hope we'll get out of this. So let's go ahead and I want to start by checking in, doing a little bit of intentional mindfulness work around where you're at. For those of us who like, a pen and paper, if you want to just jot this down for yourself, that's great. There's also a notes section in the conference app, so feel free to use your computer to type in. But this is I think a lot of us have seen this before. These are like the stages of grief. I have found that it's a really great way to align with people from the very get-go of any kind of learning experience or session. Just like, where are you at right now? And that can be on multiple different levels, right? As an individual, I could be, more towards bargaining or maybe acceptance. For my family, I think that we are definitely still kind of in the bargaining phase of understanding and processing life as it currently is in 2020 in a COVID-19 world. We're still trying to desperately grasp onto stuff that makes us feel normal. But with that comes some risk management and risk assessment. For my organization, I think that we are actually getting much closer to acceptance and commitment, which I'm super proud of, but it has taken a lot of intentionality and a lot of adaptiveness and value-led work in order to get to that place. And if anyone wants to share in the chat with the group where they're at, how they're feeling, please feel free. You might find that you have something in common with the rest of us. Amanda's at acceptance. I love that. I think that's great. Shows a lot of resilience, Amanda. Okay, so now I'm going to move us on. I'd love to do another quick share out as just a part of a way to check in with one another and enter this moment, like I said, with some conscious mindfulness. I'd love to hear from the group, from everybody on this call. What does it mean to effectively lead others through change? What does that mean to us as a group? Practicing empathy? Yes, completely agree. Willing to change along with those you lead? Tyler, I love that. No one left behind? Yes. Sense of vision and offering hope? David, that's great. Vision is super important, and I think hope is as well. Mariah, be the example and rolling with the punches. Yes. Yes. Don't ask anybody to do something that you wouldn't do. And rolling with the punches, man, I feel like that is just a that's just a good mindset in general for the times that we are in. I feel like that's something my dad says all the time. Just got to roll with the punches. Thank you. Thank you all so much for sharing. I feel like you all said stuff that rang true for me. Okay. So this is a quote that if I could see your faces, I would cold call on you to read aloud for the group. But since I can't see your faces, I'm going to go ahead and read it. And it's a quote from one of the resources that I'm about to share with you, an article that was super helpful for me as I was trying to equip our management team and our leadership team with skills in order to be successful and still achieve outcomes in this time that is crazy and rapidly changing. Over the past 6 months, we've all been inundated with nonstop news coverage about COVID-19, about racial strife, about the economy crashing or going back up. Every day seems to kind of escalate our collective sense of urgency and anxiety about what the future holds. And they have activated our survival instincts to do a lot of different things based on who you are and what your experience and perspective and lived experiences. And oftentimes that can kind of serve to be an empathy blocker. But what I love that I heard from our group today is that actually empathy has been something that some of you have been sharpening and seeing come more into focus as a leader. I think that's great. So the quote here is, now more than ever, we need leaders across all industries and organizations to rise to the occasion and practice thoughtful leadership to strengthen human connections and build resilient teams. So now, especially when that survival instinct and that kick into adrenaline mode is starting to wear off, I think this is more important than ever. And I'm seeing something in the chat, so I want to make sure. There we go. Oh yeah, Michelle Kim said that quote. She is the author of an article that I'm going to share with you all. She's a very thoughtful leader, one who leads with values. So now, as kind of a culture builder and a way to dip our toes into this content of values-based leadership, I'm going to ask you all to get out your pieces of paper or to jot down on your phone or on your computers what your CAMPS score is. So the CAMPS model is based on our 5 biggest brain cravings, and they're important not only to gauge for yourself, but for the people that you're supporting. So in your mind, I want you to think about your community organization or your work team, whoever you're here representing, whatever group of people that you're serving. in whatever capacity you're doing it, go ahead and score your team or your organization on a scale of 1 to 10 in these 5 areas. So the first one, certainty, is how predictable are your routines? Do people know what they're going to expect every time you come into contact with them? Are there clear expectations, predictable communication, that kind of thing? Autonomy means providing choices and co-creation of solutions. So do people have the right balance of ownership of the work of your organization? M is around meaning. So is there a sense of purpose and a belief in the work that you all do together? P is progress, a sense of forward movement and personal growth. And then S is socialness. So do people look to your organization for personal connection, for belonging, for inclusion? So go ahead and jot down how you would score yourself and your team. And my challenge to you is, after today, after this conference, when you're taking back everything you've learned, I would be very curious to ask your team what they would score your organization at and see where there's alignment. Because once you've normed with your team around what you all would, how you would score your organization, you can begin the process of understanding your collective perceived weaknesses and strengths, and then ask yourself, okay, if we're super low in certainty, in predictability, what would it take for us to move up our score by 1 or 2 points? And you can use this ideas bank as a place to start brainstorming for ways to move your scores where you're lowest up. And I did do this with our leadership team at Teach for America, and it was incredibly, incredibly powerful to see where we disagreed, and more interestingly, to see the places where we definitely agreed that we were weak and needed to take some action to improve. But it was really helpful for us as we were trying to lead with a value of, like, are we giving our people what they need in order to feel safe and secure in a world that feels increasingly tumultuous? Okay, so now that we've gone through the camp score, I'm going to go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into resources that I found to be very, very helpful in leading others in times of change. So one resource that I'm going to give you a glimpse in, and they are all linked in my presentation, which I'm sure is going to be made available to you all after this, so that you can access them yourself, is the People Leader Resilience Playbook, the article How to Lead When You're Afraid by Michelle Kim, and then there's a really incredible TED Talk on this concept of radical interdependence by a woman named Lorna Davis. And so something really neat that you could do, something I'm going to challenge you to do with your team or your community organization, is to review these resources and co-create your own article that you want to guide you as leaders. Resources, think through the bullets or the nuggets within each of these articles that you'd like to be true for how you show up for your community in these kind of crazy times. Because all of us are still needing to achieve certain outcomes, especially providing opportunities for people to connect and check in on one another. So having a sort of a guiding map for what you all want to be true for how you're leading during this time seems like an interesting challenge to me, even if it's just your favorite bullets. And so that is going to be my challenge to you. Write your own article. I'm going to dive into the People Leader Resilience Playbook. So it's an incredible resource based on how to meet your people where they're at. And it's around this idea of Apollo 13. So when the oxygen tank failed, Gene Kranz, who was the lead director, was hearing people say this is going to be a horrible disaster. And it was rumored that he said, I think that this is going to be our finest hour. So the People Leader Resilience Playbook is all around the concept of, what if we took this crisis, what if we took this really wild time that we find ourselves in and made it our finest hour. And imagine if a year or two from now, we look back and we are able to tell stories about how we came together as a team. I think it's a fascinating tool based around this inspiring thought that if we come together now, that can define who we are as leaders, even in the face of disaster and even with multiple barriers that we're confronted with. So I hope that you find it as useful as I did. Within the People Leader Resilience Playbook, you'll find tools like this one. This is a resource in that playbook. And it really, if you talk through this emotional audit and coping plan with your community, you can identify commonalities among the group of people that you're supporting and find ways to cope as a team. So this is just really helpful for being able to identify emotions that you're being overwhelmed with, because it breaks out the differentiation of like how anxiety can feel different than fatigue or hyper stress. So some of the coping plans listed here are really great to start brainstorming ideas. Something that we talked about on our team was a journaling challenge. A lot of people were feeling really stressed, and so the challenge was to journal for 10 minutes a day. We also, people were feeling very lonely, especially people who didn't have partners or children. And so for those people on our team, it was really easy to just set aside time to be in community with one another. Like we did breakfast meetings that were totally just unstructured, where we just chatted and ate a meal with one another on Zoom. There was also talk about watching the same movie and then chatting about it afterwards. And these are all pretty light lifts that don't present a ton of risk for exposure of COVID-19, to kind of meet your community where they are and live into the values of putting people at the center of the work that you do. So the article, which I pulled the quote from that I shared earlier, is called How to Lead When You're Afraid. And these are the high points of that article. And so I just wanted to take us quickly through the ways that Michelle Kim suggests for how to strengthen human connections and build up resilience. Checking in with yourself. And I did want to note that self-care is something I feel like we're hearing constantly. I see people talking about self-care I see them at magazines, at the grocery store. I see it on my social media feeds. It's very important, but I really think that it can only be helpful if it actually feeds your soul. So knowing yourself and what refuels you as an individual is super important on that one. She also talks about ruthless prioritization, and that was really important for our team at Teach for America, Oklahoma City. To us, what that meant doing is making a comprehensive document about all the things we were going to stop, because that was the best way to make sure that we were actually prioritizing the most important stuff that we needed to do. So, and it's really hard for organizations to let go of stuff that they've always done. But in order to meet this moment, which is super unique and super different, it felt really important to actually push ourselves to stop doing the stuff that wasn't actually going to move the needle for our people in this kind of virtual world. So that was going to be my kind of suggestion there. Communicating with transparency is also really important when you know your community is stressed and anxious. So for me and for our team in Oklahoma City, we're aiming to communicate more with our people over email, over social media. And we're communicating even if it is to say we don't have all the answers. Like at the start of the school year, normally our teachers access our office to make copies and to I mean, so sometimes it does mean just even communicating to say, we don't really know the answer right now, but we're going to find out. And here's the next time you're going to hear from us about that. Similarly, knowing that people are anxious or stressed or operating in overdrive meant that as a leadership team, we have to constantly ask ourselves if we're pushing people too hard. So that reminder to yourself, people aren't machines, is really important, because the stakes feel really high right now for everyone. I mean, for us, it's, you know, the start of the school year and the start of distance learning. For schools and teachers, we just have to remind ourselves that even though the stakes feel high and even though we're pushing and pushing and pushing, people aren't machines. And that's worth repeating to yourself often when you're asking for people to come together and work toward achieving outcomes in this time. So for number, there are other ones: setting clear expectations and norms. Don't make assumptions about what people need. It did feel very important this year to be really clear and explicit about what expectations were and what norms were, because they're constantly shifting. Asking people to do their work virtually means that we kind of had to just go ahead and redo the entire playbook, which for us meant creating a totally new staffed handbook for our team so that people knew exactly what was being asked of them. And it took more work, but ultimately at the end it was worth it, because everybody knows what our expectations are and how we can operate together in this virtual world. And yes, finally, kind of what we've seen in previous resources, creating space and opportunities for people to connect is really, really important, more important now than it's ever been. And then the third resource that I thought I'd point you all to check out after this conference is over is a really great TED Talk where Lorna Davis kind of talks about what the difference is between heroes and leaders. She says she doesn't know why hero culture persists, but interdependence is a lot harder than being a hero, because it requires us to be open and transparent and vulnerable, which are a lot of the values that you all listed in the chat earlier today. It's a really great video, and it really, really changed the way that I approached my role as a leader in Oklahoma City. And I can tell you more about that in our next portion. So this was creating a declaration of interdependence for our team really shifted the way that all of us on our team approached our work. So I wanted to kind of bring you into where we were. So weeks ago, I put this exact slide to my team at Teach for America. And we just said goodbye to 3 teammates due to budget constraints and when the economy crashed this past year. So people had lost their jobs and lost their teammates. And other people on our team, which was already small to begin with, who couldn't really tolerate the risk of potentially losing their job, had moved on. And we had just learned that those positions we would not be able to fill. So we were a smaller team than we'd ever been. And it was time to start figuring out how we were going to divide up the work, because we didn't have any less to do, but we had far less people to do it. And it felt important for me to name, just to be really explicit, like, here we are, this is interdependence land. And something that Lorna Davis talks about in her TED Talk is creating a declaration of interdependence instead of relying on a hero leader who's going to solve everyone's problems. So I asked our team a question, and we asked it of one another, which was, how do we want to be to one another this year? How do we want to operate? How do we want to collaborate, knowing that we are radically dependent on one another if we're going to be successful at achieving our 10-year goal? So I also showed them this example, which I pulled from the company that Lorna talks about in her TED Talks, so that our team had sort of an example to look to. You can read that here. I won't read it aloud to you, but you can see that they start with a vision that they have in common, what they're envisioning together, and what they believe is possible. So now, when we were facing the task of creating our very own Declaration of Independence, I narrowed down the questions that we all needed to ask ourselves, and I created a shared workstation for people to type up their answers. And I also wanted them to have a few markers, and so that we all had a shared understanding of what healthy interdependent relationships look like, which you'll see here on the right side in that turquoise box. Things like personal responsibility, safety to be vulnerable, clear communication. So, and these were the 3 questions that I really narrowed down in order to be able to create something that we could all sign our names to, kind of a declaration of interdependence. So I would love to give you all time to think about your organization and your team, and think about the communities that you're supporting, and go ahead and answer these questions for yourself. What do you envision for the future? What are you working towards? What do you know about the state of the world right now? The state of our community, of our tribal community, of your local tribal community that you're here representing? And then the last question is, what do you believe? What do you believe that your community needs from you? What do you need from the team that you're working with? And I'm just going to give you time to jot down these answers for yourself. Okay, hopefully you've had time to begin to jot down your answers to these questions. And as I've said, I believe that this presentation will be available. So if you haven't gotten to jot down everything you want to, you'll have time to after this session. So this is what the workstation I created looked like. It was just a Google sheet, so everybody had access to it. And I gave every person on my team their own tab, and I gave them time to write about their fears, their dreams, what they had to offer others, what they really needed from our team in return for sharing their own individual gifts and strengths. So this part of the process was absolutely the easiest part. The hardest part came after the session was over, and it was my job to synthesize what I was reading from all of these different people. But it was based on the same 3 questions that I just showed in the previous slide. What do you envision for the future? What do you know about the state of the world? What do you believe? What do you believe the team needs? And what do you need from the team? So the synthesizing part was definitely the hardest. But how I did it, I ended up putting everyone's answers side by side and read through all of them and read through all of them again. And then I just started bolding the words that I was seeing repeated in many different answers. So for my team, the word change kept popping up. That was a pain point for everybody, this constant change. The word community kept popping up as well. That was super important to people. That was coming through loud and clear because I was seeing the word community come up over and over again as something that people wanted to be more proximate to. They wanted to be more directly serving the community. They were craving community. And then at other times I would read an answer to a question from one of my teammates, and they would say something that was filled with so much wisdom and just hit me so hard. And if I had a feeling that it would have the same effect on other people, I went ahead and included it in the synthesis. So after a while, and when I had seen all of the different themes and the things that seemed to be the most important, I just drafted up a draft declaration of interdependence. And the most important thing I did, looking back, after I was done synthesizing, I sent back what I compiled to the team and I asked them one question. Would you sign your name to this, or do you have edits? And just kept the conversation going in multiple directions on multiple different layers, like vertically from our executive director down to our associate, horizontally across different functional teams. So keeping that conversation going and not stopping the process when I felt like I had the answer I needed, and asking the team, hey, does this sound right to you guys, was a really, really important step as I look back. And here is what we came up with. I'm really, really proud of this declaration. It was not the easiest thing I've ever had to write, but it is so reflective of our team and our values. And I hear so much about the students we all hope to serve, the fact that we want to be able to directly trace our impacts. I mean, that is grounded in our team. We have a very common shared value around data and how powerful data can be when you use it to assess your work. I see intense value for the community that we serve, a lot of empathy for them, that parents and students and families in Oklahoma City have seen so much change, so little progress over the past several decades. And people just really wanted feedback in return for giving the team their gifts. People wanted to take a collective approach this year to do all hands on deck, which is different. It's different from how we've done things. And an optimism, a sense of optimism was really important to my team. So that's, you see at the end, we believe all problems are solvable if we work as a collective. So I know I mentioned that I had sent it back to the team in a survey, and these were the responses from the team. Everybody could commit. Everybody was ready to sign their name to it. But the other thing I wanted to stop and mention here is that it really went totally okay if somebody said, wait, I have to share some suggested edits with you, or hey, as this is written now, I don't think I want to sign my name to it. Again, I think that just keeping the conversation going and giving people the chance to get even clearer and more aligned on what's the most important to them, of who, because it's about who we want to be as a collective and what values we want to lead with. And this is the most challenging year we've ever faced as a team. So aligning and those loops and loops of feedback and keeping the conversation going until you're at a point where everyone's on board, felt like it was really worth the time and the effort. And it paid off. So now we have this great Declaration of Interdependence. It's at the very beginning of our staff handbook. It's something that we're all really proud of, and that we mention when we kick off projects or when we kick off big events. We go back to this declaration, and it's been really helpful for us to kind of bind us together across our shared values. So I'm coming up on our closeout. This went by really, really fast. So I wanted to close with a kind of another shared value that we have at Teach for America Oklahoma City, which is like gratitude. We identify as Rise and Rumble is kind of our phrase, our saying. And this graphic in this Zoom background, it's a Zoom background that people on our team, if they display bravery, they get awarded this Zoom background, and it's goofy, but our people really love it, and it's still connected to our team values around choosing courage. And our core members, our teachers last year, ended up naming our team bison. They called him Dijon the Bison, which is like so goofy and silly, but I think it's super cute. But I'd love to hear in the chat what you all are grateful for moving into the rest of your day, into the rest of your week. I can speak for myself on what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful that I have a healthy family right now and that we get to celebrate my daughter's birthday tonight. And I thought I'd share what I'm grateful for, but I'd also love to open it up to any questions that you may have about the presentation or any of the resources. I'm very happy to kind of open this up for Q&A. I am on social media. I can share all of my social platforms after this if you want to keep up with what I'm doing. I'm so glad, Tyler. Glad you got something out of it. I'd also love to hear where everybody is tuning in from. If I'm the only Oklahoma City person zooming in today. Seattle, Amanda? I love Seattle. Stillwell? Hey, Stillwell. Got some family there. North Carolina, hi, Tanya. David in LA, wow. That's great. California, Dixie. Hi, Dixie. Sacramento. These are some pretty big Cherokee organizations, if I'm remembering from my time with the tribe. I think that you all have pretty large community organizations, so hopefully this will be helpful. I also feel like our moderators would want me to remind you all to please fill out the survey, the evaluation, so that you're eligible to get some cool swag, some CCO swag. Savannah, I don't know if you're able to come off mute, but can you tell us what the swag is?
You know, I didn't order the swag, but I know there's t-shirts,
Okay.
coffee cups,
Okay.
what else? Like some notebooks, pens, just a lot of little knickknacks.
Just some cool Cherokee swag. I love it.
There's some good stuff, and then there's some stuff that might just end up in a drawer somewhere.
Right. I'm so glad, Amanda. I'm so glad. And if you have any follow-up questions or want a thought partner, please reach out. I will make all of my contact information available. But I love to problem solve around stuff like this. So happy to be there. Me too, Tyler. I am very grateful to be a part of this tribe. And I'm very grateful there are leaders like all of you all over the country supporting our people. It's so great. When I lived in DC, I still was able to get my son Wyatt registered as a Cherokee citizen, even from DC, at awesome organizations like the ones you all are a part of. So thank you. I need to do that with his sister. She's not registered yet. I was really on the ball with my firstborn, poor Audrey. Amanda, how to apply the values, leadership, and discussions of inclusiveness and equity? That's a great question. I think I'd love to talk to you more about this. I know we're getting close to the end of the session, but discussions of inclusiveness and equity are, I mean, we're constantly grappling with those discussions right now. For my team personally, I think that one way that we are kind of leading with values in those topics. We're engaging in a lot of we're calling them listening tours with our people, just to hear about their experiences, for leadership to kind of really take a seat back and just listen and learn. That's one way that we're kind of doing that, because there have been a lot of questions around what kind of how much do we want to live into that shared value of inclusivity and diversity and equity. And I think something that our leadership team saw was that we needed to listen and learn, and then come up with a plan that's more informed around what our people are telling us. So listening tours would be one suggestion that I would have. Of course, yeah. All right, friends. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you all so much. Stay in touch.
Hey, Chelsea, I was going to say, you know, I think, was it Amanda was wanting to know your social platforms? I think we can add that to your speaker info on the app.
Okay. Okay.
So you could probably put all that on there, or if you just want to, trying to think, unless you want to put it in the chat.
I think I know how to edit my profile.
Okay.